What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is New York rapper and producer PremRock. We spoke about falling in love with horror movies during quarantine, writing screenplays, whether or not flashbacks in movies are tacky, his love for West Coast hip-hop, the importance of rap regionalism, his group The Wrecking Crew, his relationships with engineers Willie Green and rapper Curly Castro, and the creative process behind his latest album, Load-Bearing Crow's Feet, out now via Backwoodz Studioz. Come fuck with us. Hey, what's cracking, everybody? Welcome back. I think this is number 18. Yeah, this is number 18. Real Notes number 18. We're really chugging along here. It's kind of surreal to think about. Dylan, CineMasai, two names. Those are two of my names. Every intro is different. I've kind of accepted that at this point. Every guest I have on here is super tight. We all know this at this point, but we got a very, very special individual with us in the building today. This guy's been wrapping circles around people for a minute, as you know, by himself and as a part of quite a few collectives, at least two that I could think of. So like, we got PremRock. We got PremRock in the house, in the house place to be. I'm stumbling over my words, bro. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate
that's an amazing intro. Really great intro. Thank you. I'll take all the superlatives that you just heaped on me. I appreciate it, for real. Great pod. Excited to be on it. Let's go.
Thank you so much. Like that, it's like we were just saying this off camera for a second. Like it's like this is only number 18, and it's crazy to hear people like I'm still not used to people telling me like, oh, I've heard it before. Like I'm like it's so. Thank you, man. That really means the world.
Leaps and bounds, man. We're going. You know.
Hell yeah. So So I'm gonna ask you the first question I ask everybody who comes on, which is what's the last movie or TV show you watched that you had a strong opinion about?
Oh, my sister was just up here, and you know, we might not have been in the right headspace. We had just gone out the night before for my birthday, so you know, I was a little, we were like lounging around. She's like, yeah, she's into lots of weird stuff. She's an artist. She teaches art at George Mason, and she's like, have you ever heard of the movie House? And I was like, House? And I'm like, at first she said, have you heard of House? And I was like, yeah, that doctor that plays by his own rules, that guy. And she's like, no. She's like, it's a Japanese movie. Apparently it was way ahead of its time. All these artists cite it as influences, all that. So we watched that, and it's pretty bugged out, man. I don't think I fully appreciate it, so I think I'm gonna run it back because it is on HBO Max, so you can watch it whenever if you have HBO Max. But wow, quite a trip. Really funny, really surreal. Psychedelic rock soundtrack is killer.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, every scene kind of has a core. I love when movies have a corresponding like riff or keys or whatever to like, oh, this person's sad, they're reflective. And then the moody keys start playing. This person's in danger. Then it's like, the and so they have some really interesting ones. And I could dig around to find out who the band was, but I thought it was all really crazy and cool and weird. So House, if you got the time. Yeah.
Oh, I'm really happy you brought that up because that's one of my favorite movies ever.
Wow.
I love this fucking movie.
I'm gonna rewatch it. I know I'm gonna rewatch it because I was like watching it, but at the same time, like I had a phone call come in, and we just let it play because we were kind of like, it was very like, a lax watch. So I'm gonna run it back, I think. So
yeah, no, it's definitely one of those movies that like, it's one of those you have to like sit and watch it, or else you're like you're gonna walk out lost. Like I discovered it maybe about a decade ago because I was really into the Criterion collection, and it's on the Criterion collection.
Yeah.
My friend copped it, so we all watched it, and I was like, and the shit blew my mind. It was like I think the back of the DVD case described it as like it was something. I forget what they compared it to, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't cite it. But like they compared it to like an episode of Scooby-Doo, like put through like about 3 or 4 more like surreal filters, and the director and his daughter, the director Nobuhiko Obayashi and his daughter came up with the concept for the story, and like her, she was really young at the time, so like her influence is kind of the reason like there's so many really weird like visual flourishes, like all the different filters they use, and like
Yeah.
and like that scene where like the pillows and like the sheets are attacking
Yeah.
attic, like that was like her idea. And they, and like the refrain they used and they like used throughout the movie in a whole bunch of different ways, I think they specifically did it that way because they had like no budget.
Yeah.
And it was just like, we need like one melody that we can use throughout the entire movie in about 6 different ways to like communicate whatever we need to communicate. And like the movie was, and like it's weird, it didn't have a big budget, but the movie was supposed to be like, it was supposed to be the Japanese equivalent to Jaws. Like the film studio they made it for was like, we want you to make a blockbuster like Jaws, and they handed them this. Like, you know. So
I mean, I love when things like that happen, when they like they turn in like something so weird and so not what the studio wanted. You know, it makes for like, why are we still talking about this movie? You know what I mean? Like that's why. Yeah, like real, you know, real impactful. That's crazy. That's one of your favorite movies. Wow. You know, another movie I saw recently that kind of stuck with me was Wade in the Water. It's like an indie, really interesting premise because the main character is pretty obese, you know, and you don't see that often. And he's a pretty compelling character. He's like a loner who stumbles upon, he like gets the premise is he gets a video in his mailbox that wasn't supposed to be in his mailbox. It was supposed to be next to the PO box next to his, and it was like child porn or something really damning, right? So he was like, what is this? And then it sets off this like really crazy chain of events where this guy who's literally got no real reason to live, other like he like no one, you know, he's got no one in his life, then becomes kind of like dropped into an extraordinary situation. And it's like one of the very interesting conflict occurs. So that I thought was pretty interesting too. So Wade in the Water.
Wow. Okay. I guess I got to look that one up. It kind of reminds me of this other movie I saw way back. I don't remember who directed it, but I think it was called Fat Girl.
Okay.
About this. It's about 2 girls. One who's also, I don't think she's particularly obese, but she's, you know, like a little overweight, and this other girl who's like, and just like their relationship about, and like it's kind of like, I just remember it being extremely dark, and I remember it making me really sad. Like I don't remember any like plot specifics or anything like that. I just remember watching that and being like, I'm sad now. Like
yeah. I'm really sorry. I was just moving my computer because my internet was a little spotty, but now we're good.
You're good.
Yeah. And that's I'll definitely check that out because I'm interested in people that are cast that are unusual, right? Because like I think they're kind of pivoting towards. I kind of think like Stranger Things was like a turning point where it's like these kids are all uniquely strange looking in a way. You know what I mean? Like you got the dude with the teeth missing, and obviously everyone loved that dude. But it wasn't like, oh, these kids are all beautiful and diverse. It's like there's something interesting about these people, like, you know, and it catches your eye. And I'm like, I'm always like intrigued by that because I was like, oh wow, the protagonist is like 300 pounds, like very overweight and unhealthy. Like that's interesting to me. And like, you know, so find it a unique device sometimes.
Yeah, I just appreciate all different, you know, like body types and, you know, sexual orientations and like all that stuff being represented in anything, and not even just like in a superficial way. Cause kind of sort of related. I was watching the newest episode of Loki, not the one that came out today, but last week. And there's quite a few Black women in the show, and most of them are kind of being used as plot devices right now. Like one of them was killed off. Another one is probably got killed off, but we're not really sure yet. And the other one's a villain. And like, while it's great to be able to see like Black women play different kinds of roles, like, you know, not every Black woman has to be a hero, but like, they're just like, I think that's a really great example of representation not going as far as people think it does. Like just having Black bodies around, or just like having, you know, like for lack of a better term, gay bodies around or fat bodies around, and not exploring them in meaningful ways. Like that's like that's what makes stuff like Wade in the Water or Fat Girl, or I guess to an extent Stranger Things, like that's what makes them vital and interesting. Like not just the fact like, oh, like we have a fat character. Like it's
Yeah.
so I
I
think that's
watched that. Speaking of that, Tangerine was a pretty interesting movie.
Tangerine
Yeah,
tight. Yeah, wow.
speaking of representation that you don't normally get, and that was cool to see. Like, obviously not like a heartwarming, uplifting movie, but like the dynamics behind, that subsection of people. And I was like, whoa, never really thought of it, and then here you are, like thrown into that world, So
Wow. And yeah, like fun fact that the whole movie was shot on an iPhone.
iPhone, yeah,
Beautiful. Like that was that was like right around the time when people were really starting to take the iPhone seriously as like a film.
Yeah. It's super interesting. Goes to show it's not the equipment, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Shout out to iPhone. Shout out to all the trans homies and everyone. Go watch Tangerine because it's super dope, and I need more people to talk about it with.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely thought it was a great movie.
Hell yeah. So let's run it back for you. What's the first movie experience you can remember having, whether that's at the theater, your cousin's house, home, wherever? Like,
So I guess Jurassic Park. When I was really young, I was really into dinosaurs. I remember like I didn't think there couldn't have been a movie more tailored for what I wanted to see than a bunch of bringing dinosaurs back. I was like, let's go. Like I was so ready for that as a kid. So I remember going to the theater with I think like two of my friends, and that was like really, really impactful. Now I'm trying to think of like, I think I saw like on TV or something, I saw Stand By Me really young and was really like engrossed in the idea of like being on my own and like finding a dead body. It was like a kind of like a mythical thing. And they kind of like, I'm like, oh man, imagine if me and my like friends, like, snuck out and, got on this crazy adventure. So that kind of stoked my imagination a little bit. Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones, when he rips the heart out.
Classic.
Yeah, classic scene, right? Not a good movie, but
There's no Raiders of the Lost Ark, at least. But,
no, oh man. So the Indiana Jones, yeah, I was into that. But the Temple of Doom scene really stuck with me. I remember because I was like really freaked out, and I'm trying to think what else. I think those are kind of the ones that jump out to me now that you mention it. Yeah, I'll go with those.
Okay. Is there like, because I mean, like you mentioned, you also mentioned Jurassic Park, which I feel like a lot of people that's kind of like a base start for so many people that I've talked to.
Yeah.
So like between that and Stand By Me and Temple of Doom, like was there anything in particular about those movies that kind of stuck out to you besides the fact that like you were really into dinosaurs or like the heart out scared you? Like,
so I guess one is like, all right, so Jurassic Park, that's like a blockbuster done well, right? And Temple of Doom, blockbuster done poorly. And then Stand By Me is this good storytelling. I think good writing. Everything kind of lines up. Except for maybe what happens afterwards. I mean, kind of, I don't know. I'm not sure. But I think like that was a pretty good use of minimalist and where you're, there's not much like not all that much happens in that movie. They're just kind of looking for this dead body and they find it, and it's a little bit anticlimactic other than Kiefer Sutherland rolling up on him with a gun. Other than that. So yeah, I think it's like, I didn't really grasp any kind of firm understanding of like film or what anything devices or what was happening or was this good quality. I don't know. I was just entertained,
Right.
But looking back, I guess reasonable films to watch as a kid.
Yeah, totally. And Stand By Me in particular is at least in my opinion one of the better Stephen King adaptations too. Those can kind of be like they're either like really really good or mostly really really bad, and then there's a few that are in that middle.
I remember I wanted Tommy Knockers to be good, and it was really bad.
I never saw Tommy Knockers actually.
Yeah, you don't have to. I'll save you that time. So, yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I talk with so many people about The Shining, and like people have very strong feelings about The Shining because it's either this amazing standalone movie that changed the course of horror cinema, or it's just a really shitty Stephen King adaptation. Like it's there's no in between with The Shining. Like it's either love
Yeah.
with it.
Did you
Like,
know it was the 100th anniversary of that picture, the Overlook
really?
Hotel? Yeah, July 4th, 1921.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Someone posted that on Twitter. God, I waste so much time on Twitter. But I saw that and I was like, whoa.
Pretty
What
wild.
is the documentary? Room 20 what?
Room
237?
yeah, 237. There you go.
237. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty entertaining.
Mhm.
Yeah, The Shining, I think is really, I think cited by many artists, obviously, for being like super impactful. I guess because when it came out, what was it, 81?
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So I think at some point in our age bracket, from 29 to 36, like we saw The Shining at some point. You were exposed to it, whether it was on TV or for a friend or a parent or whatever. And yeah, I think it's like there's something about it that's like particularly dark and hopeless, but in a way that's like it's building, and then it happens, and you know it's happening, and I don't know, the way it's done is just obviously Jack is amazing too, and the way he kind of descends into the ending is it's entertaining. I don't know, it's done really well. I did read the book when I was much younger. I don't really remember much about it, but it seemed like a solid adaptation, or probably the gold standard of adaptations for him.
Right. Yeah, I read the book when I was younger too, and I don't remember a lot of it, but yeah, like I like the movie. I think it's really entertaining. I have a good time with it. I can kind of having gone back and like skimmed through it again, I can kind of understand people's concerns. Like there are people who like live and die by that book.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see why they would feel certain ways about it. And I think it's cool. I get why people don't like it. I have issues with it, but it's not like I wouldn't exactly call them like serious. It's just, like, I like it. I'm with you. I like it. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I want to watch it again because it's been a while. Like,
yeah.
I remember really enjoying it the first
I
time.
think that's something I need to get better at is like if a certain amount of time passes, like you're a different person, so you should rewatch something if you consider it. I don't reread books like I should. If like I'm like, all right, well, I read that, like that changed my life when I was 17. It's like, what do I think of it now? Or you know what I mean? And we should probably do that with movies if we consider them, part of the canon that we want to, consult, artistically, or if you just want to watch something stupid again. I really love scenes of like I'm like a cheap date in terms of like the guy or the girl or whoever redeems himself with some crazy scheme that they pull off. Like I saw Mississippi Grind. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've seen this.
It's fun, man. The rolling of the dice, and you're like, oh, does he get it all back? Does he lose it all? Like, I'm a sucker for that. Sometimes I want to watch some like art house, open to interpretation, really deep. And other times I'm like, I just want to see a guy win a hand of poker that changes his life too. So yeah.
No, like that shit is cool. Like I don't know why I just thought about it, but when I was younger, my sister was really into the movie 13 Going on 30. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that.
I've never seen it, but what is it? What's
It's
it?
it was a Jennifer Garner. I almost said Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer Garner movie.
Right.
She's like works at a big company, and for some reason no, just kidding. It's she's a 13-year-old girl, and for some reason she turns into like she just grows up to become 30, and like for some
it's like a big situation. Is there some
more
kind
or
of
less,
okay?
yeah. Like she just like wakes up one day and she's 30, and so like it's just Jennifer Garner playing 13 years old in her however old she is body, and like I've been thinking about that movie recently for I don't know why, but it just like popped into my head, and like and so you mentioned the like you just want to see people win and like the crazy schemes, like
yeah.
I just know like for some reason when you said that, like romantic comedies are really big on that type of shit, and I just like,
oh yeah,
it's like that, and like Kate and Leopold. You ever see that with Hugh Jackman and Meg Ryan?
I have not. I'm a sucker for a rom-com though. I'll definitely say, like,
Yeah.
if it's well done.
Kate and Leopold is about a guy from the 1800s who falls into a time portal and wakes up in the modern day, which I think is either the late 90s or the early 2000s. Don't remember which one. And it's just, you know, like he's just like this like British nobleman, like talking to people who are like hitting up their Blackberries and shit.
Yeah.
It's you know, like, fish out of water type shit. I'm a sucker for that shit too.
Okay. So
and like he falls in love with Meg Ryan and
yeah. I mean, as one does, you know.
Especially at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so time travel is an interesting concept in general. Have you ever taken like screenwriting classes or anything like that? Are you interested in that?
I have.
Yeah. I think the guy I took like one class, which was pretty cool. You know, I have some ideas of things I want to do eventually. But he was telling the class to never use flashbacks. So how do you feel about flashbacks? Do you think they're weak, or do you think they serve a purpose? Because it's like, I think phenomenal storytelling, we don't need to see the flashback to know why we're here. But in other like places where it's like you go back in time and you see like why that person got that way. Do you think it's a weak thing or strong?
Generally, no, honestly. Like I've seen flashbacks implemented too many times in like a decent way for me to be like, oh, like it shouldn't ever be used. Like, there are plenty of bad examples and like I guess lazy examples of like flashbacks and stories, but I think when used well, like I'm trying to think of like a really recent example, because I guess a movie that uses flashbacks, or no, a movie that doesn't use flashbacks that I could have seen a lazier version of its script use flashbacks is something like Get Out, right? Because like we don't really, because like we learn everything we learn about Daniel Kaluuya's character like through his actions and like through him talking with Lil Rel and Vanessa Williams, not Vanessa Williams. Oh man, what's her name? I'm blanking on the woman's name. She's Brian Williams' daughter. It's not Vanessa Williams. Damn it. I forget. She's on Girls.
Okay.
But yeah, so like we learn everything we learned about Daniel Kaluuya's character through his actions and all of that. Like I could see how a quote unquote weaker version of that script would have like done it all from flashbacks.
Yeah.
And actually, now that I think about it, Get Out opens with a flashback. It opens with Lakeith Stanfield getting I'm getting nabbed off. That's technically a flashback.
Technically it is, yeah, you're right.
I actually think that adds more to the context of his character, because Lakeith Stanfield's character is not really in the movie a whole bunch. He's in the movie for maybe like he's a big part of it, but he's only in the movie proper. He's like maybe like 10, maybe 15 minutes of screen time tops, and then he gets lobotomized and set out. So like I think in instances like that, I think oh man, I'm thinking now because you could also argue that it's not a flashback. You could argue that like they're like showing it in the order from when it happened, because he gets caught and then Daniel Kaluuya and them are there and he's already there. It depends on how you look at it, but I'm gonna argue that it's a flashback. And I think that that's implemented pretty well. I think that adds a layer of context to who this guy is and just kind of shows the insidiousness of what all the white people were doing in that movie. And it drives the point home more than it would have if we just show up and he's there, you know, like.
And it's creepy.
Yeah.
Like it's a creepy scene and like adds a layer of like, you know, like the music the guy's playing and all that stuff. It's like, it's useful. I don't think it's like, oh, let's go back to like the beginning about their relationship and like that would be, you know, that would be cheap, or like how they met or something like that. That would be a little cheaper, you know? So I think they did it well.
Totally. And then like the end of the scene is like, you see the person run up on him and then take him, but like his, but like both their heads are cut off. So like all you see is like the top of their bodies and you see Lakeith's feet like shaking like he's being hung, and like it's like you said, it's creepy. Like they did like the scene is just great, and it adds that like, okay, like you need to know that something's happening, because like you could argue that Lakeith Stanfield's character showing up and then him not seeming right, and then it turns out, oh, he's been lobotomized. Like that's like you could argue that would work too, but I think this kind of sets the scene. It's just like, okay, like there's no ambiguity here. Like something's wrong here. Like, and I think that's a good example of flashback used properly.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like a dozen others of like, even I'm trying to think of like a specific example, because yeah, you really got me thinking about this now.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of. I wouldn't even. Sorry, I keep moving around my bad. So I think it's interesting. Not even really debate, but like when he said that, I was like, I felt a little challenged. I was like, you know what? Well, maybe I would write one that would change this dude's mind or something. And then, not that I'm like married to the idea of like a flashback, but I thought it was interesting and interesting to hear your opinion on it too. So.
Oh yeah, totally. That's not like, I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's something that I don't. It's something that I only think about whenever other people bring it up. And
Yeah.
it's because like when I took my class, I don't think we really touched on that, but but there's definitely issues with it, and there are movies that lean a little too much on it. Like, as you know, like as much as some people might love Forrest Gump, like that's a movie that relies almost entirely on flashbacks. Like,
Yeah.
the movie's a flashback.
I'm a sucker for that movie though, a little bit. I mean, it's like it's the Lieutenant Dan story arc is heartwarming. I don't care who you are. You know, he got his legs. He found his reason to live. But yeah, you're right. That relies a lot. I mean, like jumping timelines and then how to this and that.
Right.
For sure.
And one more before we move on, I just remembered Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is like,
for sure,
like that's an incredible use of flashbacks throughout that whole movie. Like, just like there's one scene in that movie where Jim Carrey had to change outfits. I think like he like ran somewhere off camera, and then he had to go into a basement and change into a completely different outfit in 12 seconds to like show the passing of time through this house or whatever. Yeah. And like they had to get the take. They did the take, I think, like a bunch of times, and like just like the way that movie handles time and the way it uses flashbacks to handle time is like, that's like, I think like that's probably the I want to call it like the platonic ideal for like, that's how you use flashbacks in a movie. Like like that's how you can weave the past into a story without it feeling like you're like, it's only ever a problem for me if it starts to feel like a crutch. And it's not, it doesn't often, like, it doesn't feel like a crutch often enough for me to be like, no one should ever do this, you know, like, but you know, that's just me.
Yeah. I think that's accurate. I didn't say that I definitely agreed with my teacher, so I was like, that's interesting discussion to have.
No, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because like that,
sure.
I never would have touched that. So shout out to you.
Yeah, you know.
So you know, like so like you mentioned these 4 movies at the beginning as kind of like your core, or maybe not your core, but like some of the first memories you have of seeing movies. So like is there a specific movie that made you fall in love with the idea of movies, and like on like a deeper level, like as art, or like even just as like, wow, like this is a movie that just made me appreciate like not even in like an artistic sense, but just kind of like opened your eyes to like like movie magic. It could be either one of those. I know that was really weirdly worded, but
no, that's good. I totally understand what you're saying. Interesting. I would have considered myself not a movie person for like the large early portion of my life. Like I watched, big movies that came out. I would go to the theater, I guess, what an average person would do. But I didn't really like get into like the idea of cinema and screenwriting, acting, all that stuff, like until like pretty recently. I'd say like the last 3 years. And then quarantine, I just watched hundreds, probably like 200 movies. Like like 3-4 movies a night for real. And and so I got really into different subgenres and all that stuff, and I got deep. But I wouldn't say that there was like a watershed moment where I'm like, oh yeah, movies. I just was super interested in storytelling, and I always will be. And I can't, you know, I guess I don't have like a definitive moment I always thought that maybe my attention span wasn't great for like films, you know, like earlier in my life, and then like as I aged, I was able to hone in on like 2 hours. Like, let's do this. Like, you know, don't even look at my phone. Like, let's check this out. Um, so I think that, yeah, as I matured, I got more into how you can capture like a truly well crafted story in a long form, you know, in a long form movie like that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but you know, yeah.
I guess since you brought it up, I'll get a little more specific. Were there any movies you watched during quarantine that kind of like, not even, once again, not even in like an artistic way, but like, were there
Yeah.
any movies that stood out to you while you ran through your 200 over the course of a year and change?
I have an iPhone note, my notes app that lists most of the movies I watched. uh, oh man! All right, so my appreciation for horror almost entirely formed in the last couple years, and I don't like gratuitous violence, right? I don't like when someone gets cut open and all that. Like I watch it, but I flinch. You know, my girl makes fun of me. She's like, "You wanted to watch this. Like, why are you? You know?" I'm like, "Well, you know, it's natural to like clutch your chest if someone gets stabbed. You know." So I don't love like that, but I got really into some Korean horror movies. Like Wailing was amazing. The Host was cool because it had kind of like yeah, exactly. It had that element to it that was like this creature feature too, you know, as well as all this other thing, and then political you know influences and all that. I'm looking at my list here. I thought Creep 1 and 2 was like really well done.
I don't think I know what that is actually. You said
Oh,
Creep.
really? It's what's his face? Mark Duplass. And
Oh no, I
yeah,
know what that is. And I've
yeah.
never seen them, but I know a lot about Duplass, and he's
I recommend watching it because it's like everything you know about that dude or those dudes is like it definitely turned on its head for that movie. It's really lo-fi. I mean, super lo-fi, but really well done and really creepy.
real quick before you move on.
Yeah.
My girlfriend hates Mark Duplass. Like one of the first things we talked about when we talked about like she's seen those movies and like she can't stand them.
If you can't, yeah.
Like,
Oh, my girl was like, no, I'm not watching this. Like, I don't like this dude. Like, same. And I'm like, all right, yeah, it's fine.
she's about as opposed to his movies as one could possibly be. And he's like, and yeah, like he's a part of like this movement. I think it's called Mumblecore. Like it's kind of like they're kind of united in like this lo-fi thing and like
Yeah.
and just like I guess like in terms of like content and just like the fact that like I don't know, but like it's just funny you brought that up because like she hates Mark Duplass movies.
I really love when people have vendettas against random actors and actresses, and they're just like, nah, I don't watch that person, and I'm like, that's so funny to me because it's like, yeah, like there's certain people you can't stand or whatever. I mean, obviously there's like reasonings why you wouldn't like somebody for the like personally, you know, because they're a scumbag in real life. But there's also like some people just can't stand the way someone looks or the way someone says something, and I always crack up when I find out people's different like, oh no, I can't do that. I can't watch that movie because so and so's in it. And I'm like, oh, it's funny. So all right, Duplass, get out of here, get out of town. Anyway, if you could sneak away, I would check out Creep 1, and it's one of those situations where Creep 2 might be better.
Okay.
And that is not common, you know.
No, not at all. Like sequels are usually never better than the original.
Nah, definitely not. So you know, I really like what A24 does, and it's kind of like if I see the A24, I'm probably in. I'm probably in on watching it. You know, Hereditary and Midsummer were kind of stayed with you a little bit, but I don't know, they did a lot of really good things in terms of horror, you know, and it kind of like opened my eyes to like, it's weird when people are like, no, I don't like horror. And I'm like, that's just, I don't know how you can really just say that, like a blanket statement. I don't like horror. Right? It's weird because there's so many levels to it. There's psychological thriller, whatever, you know, whatever you want to call it. And quarantine for me was like an awakening of that. I'm like, man, I will check out pretty much as long as it's artfully done. I don't really like go for slasher movies, you know, like I said about the gratuitous violence, I'm like, but if it's like good and like well crafted, and people are like, nah, like you should watch this. Like I definitely will. So I had a horror awakening. Not saying I'm gonna like make a horror screenplay, but it really changed the way I look at movies. So maybe I had my awakening way later in life.
Hey, you know,
So, yeah,
that's cool. Like it doesn't always happen when you're young. Like sometimes, you mentioned 824. A bunch of people I talked to on here, like Moonlight has kind of been this like watershed moment for so many people, like way more than I realized.
yeah,
And like 824 in particular is like you said, like I'm the same way. Like if 824 is involved, I'm probably involved. I just saw The Last Black Man in San Francisco for the first time a couple weeks ago.
I haven't seen that.
It's incredible.
Yeah, you recommend it? All right, cool.
Incredible.
Yeah. That's 824 too.
It's 824. It started out as a Kickstarter campaign that the director and one of the main actors started, because like they're from that area and they wanted to like bring this movie to life. And Jonathan, why am I forgetting his name? The guy from Lovecraft Country, who's going to be Kang in the new Marvel movies. His name is Jonathan Majors. That's like his first big major role in a movie ever, and he smashes the whole thing. He's a big part of the reason why the movie works the way it does.
Nice.
And it's like really beautiful, soulful piece about like gentrification in San Francisco, and just about like our relationship to art and nature, and just like very specifically like Black communication, just like really beautiful stuff. And like it's something that everyone should watch. It's really incredible stuff.
All right, wow, all right, that's good. That's good praise. I'll definitely check it. It's been in the queue for a minute, and then I guess I didn't have a firm grasp of what it was. I just was always like not so sure if I want to go there right now. But that's cool. That's good to know.
Pretty sad.
Yeah, I imagine, you know, Moonlight, incredible, really incredible. Super glad that got the claim and the platform, you know, it did, because it was worth it. It was one of those things where, you know, everyone talks about something, and then you're like, all right, and then it's not, you know.
But nah.
It's not what it is.
That one definitely lives up to the hype. Beautiful movie.
Yeah, and the fact that La La Land, I mean, it's just like whatever.
It'll live on in infamy because of that, and I'm fine with it. Like now, like movie, but now it's also an event, and I'm fine with that. Like,
I watched La La Land on a plane, which is like if I fly overseas or something. You know, I do dig the two movies, like, and usually the selections are not bad typically, but I watched La La Land. I'm like, all right, now, whatever. It's like, it serves its purpose, right? It's like, I'm sure it was a go film, and they're like, cool. All right, we got it. Like, people will like this, and this will make money. But when you're pitting it against Moonlight, it's like, come on, what are we doing here?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But that's super dope that it's super dope that you took that time to go through this collection of movies and like really gain, and because like it's really never too late, you know, like it's never too late to kind of into your own and realize like, hey, this is like especially when it comes to horror, because I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about what horror as a genre is, and like what it's supposed to be able to do, and like how it can mix with other genres too. Like horror is I would go on to say that horror is probably one of the most malleable forms of film ever, because you can make a horror comedy, it could be psychological horror like you were saying, it could be slasher, it could be you can make like a horror documentary. Like there's like so many different kinds of things you can do with a horror movie that you can't necessarily do with like, I can't even think of another example. I don't know. Like, I just love how, like, horror just seems to be constantly mutating, and I love it. Like,
because everyone's idea of terror or you know, fear is different, and I mean, I agree. I mean, super malleable. It's a blank canvas in terms of like what can get that reaction out of you that you're like, damn, or it stays with you. It's creepy, or it's like you think twice about getting up and going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, like that. You know what I mean? Like what gets that, what elicits that reaction out of you can be very different depending on who you are, you know?
Totally. Like, you know, like there's a difference between something like one of my favorite movies ever is Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, which is the very first movie he made before he made Lord of the Rings. It's this disgusting, campy, gory horror movie about this mutated rat that starts biting people and turning them into zombies. It's like, it's so much fun if you're into that sort of thing. But like, there's a difference between a movie like that and something like Being John Malkovich, which I would argue is a horror movie. Like, what's scarier than having another person invade your head and like having someone in your head that's not you? You know,
taking over what? Yeah.
It's terrifying. Like to me, that's a horror movie. But but like, that's just, you know, like that just shows, that proves how far you can take it. You know.
Yep. I agree. And then like something like ridiculous is It Follows. I don't know if you watched that.
Love It Follows. Great movie.
Yeah, people need to be watching who they're sleeping with, man. Hey, but but that was a funny concept, man. That was fun.
Yeah.
But,
also,
I
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, just saying, I agree with you. So go on.
Right. Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, It Follows, also really artfully done, like really beautiful cinematography, great score, really interesting concept with like just like soup. I think that might have also been A24. I could be wrong about that.
Would make sense. Would definitely make sense. I'm gonna look it up.
So let's move forward a little bit. Like you have so when you're younger, you're kind of building up this, you're building up this relationship with movies that isn't necessarily the deepest yet, but you're at least like, like present and enjoying movies on occasion. So when did you first fall in love with music?
Incredibly early age. My father played guitar, not seriously, but like he would, play guitar around me, and he played a lot of jazz too. He's a huge jazz fan. He still is. So that aspect, jazz, like you don't always like what your parents like, obviously, but it's your first exposure to music. My mom was really into Marvin Gaye, and kind of Motown stuff, and Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was like, a staple. Always playing, and Beatles too were always playing. And the Beatles, that took me a while to get into, because I was like, my dad's, it meant like, it's like something your dad likes. You don't necessarily like it, like, but I mean, I heard Eazy-E when I was 5 or 6. I was really, really young, and it was like I was like in kindergarten, and it was like a cassette Walkman. My friend had stolen or borrowed or whatever, took his brother's tape, and it was the Dr. Dre diss song. I can't remember off the top of my head, but like,
okay.
And I listened, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not supposed to have this. There's no way I'm supposed to have this. This is crazy. Like, what is this noise? Like, this is the bass and his voice, and obviously the profanity. Like, it was all like encompassing. I was like, I need to know everything about this. And it was so hard to like grasp, because you're a kid. And that was my first like real memory of like hip hop in particular. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it was a real thing. It sounded like nothing like I'd been exposed to. Knew I wasn't allowed to have it. But I was immediately like feverish of like trying to find out more and more about like this music. And it was really like, probably like the bass and the drums that was like drove me like up a wall. I was like, I don't know what this is. I have to know more about it. And then obviously as I grew up, I remember being like 9, and that was like the year that older brothers are kind of like the gateway, so I don't have an older brother, but all my friends had older brothers. So we would, sneak into the rooms and take what we could give back later, and like, that year was probably like 93 or 94 when I was 9, right? Something like that. 94. Okay. And that year was like incredibly like formative for me. It was like Doggy Style was everywhere. My mom was like, Snoop Dogg was like public enemy number 1 in our house. Like, she knew how much I loved this dude. She was like, this guy's terrible. Like, the murder was a case trial is happening. He's in the mainstream. Like, and she knows I love this. I look up to this guy. I love him. And she was like, I was a really gifted kid. Like, if they wanted to skip me ahead a year, and then my sister was like, she's a year older than me. She was like, hell no, he's not going to be in my grade, And I was like, I don't want to be in Rachel's grade, I want to stay with my friends. But I was starting to like kind of slack, and my mom was like, you need to get A's again. If you get A's, I'll buy Doggy Style for you. And I'm like, duh. the real version? And she's like, the real version. So I got A's. Boom, just like that. I was the best student I could be. We went in, wherever it was, like Sam Goody or something. She buys it for me. And for like 5 glorious days, I had it. She's like, your dad cannot know about this. For 5 glorious days, I had the real version with all the skits, everything. And then she knocks on my door and she's like, I haven't been able to like sleep, like a night's sleep, knowing that I got you this. You're too young to have this. It's too bad. I got to return it. And I was like, no, freaking out. And I think she got me. She's like, how about Belle Biv DeVoe? And I'm like, Belle Biv DeVoe? No, you don't
like,
get
no.
it. You get it. Or like Rex in Effect, they don't have parental advisory. They don't need to curse. And I'm like, I forget what I settled on. It was deflating. All I wanted was that cassette. And now I see, I was talking to my mom about it. Now he's like, I got cooking shows with Martha Stewart and and Bob Hope or whatever. It's like yeah. He really that man is a masterclass in longevity and image rehabilitation.
Real.
But that was huge, man. It was really probably West Coast that G-Funk that was like so interesting to me. Even
right, really, yeah.
Beyond the content of the music,
Right, yeah, because clearly you started with Eazy-E, and like there's just something about like the funk and the vibe of like all that early stuff that really kept like so the first time I went to California was in 2018. Okay. And I've been talking to a friend who recently who actually passed away last year, unfortunately, about
R.I.P.
Yeah, for real. He and I, like, he's from the Bay, or he was from the Bay. So he and I were talking about how music always hits different when you're like listening to it in the area where the person's from. And one of the
100%.
And one of the things I told him was that this is speaking to what you said about Snoop being this like masterclass on longevity and like his generational impact on different generations. Because like for me, my first Snoop projects were Rhythm and Gangster and Blue Carpet Treatment. And like Blue Carpet Treatment was like those 2 albums were so important to me when I was younger. And I told him
that's interesting.
I told him I can't wait to like drive through Cali and listen to Blue Carpet Treatment. And when I went to Cali, I listened to that and Blues, Good to Be Home. Those are the 2 albums that I played more than any other when I was in California for those.
Very West Coast records.
Yeah, So like, but like I say all of that to say that like there's really something about the music, like you said, it's just so driving and like just like it's really about groove. Groove just pushes you through so much, and like you could say anything over a groovy enough beat, and people are gonna find some reason to be like, yeah, this kind of goes though. Like it doesn't matter. Like
if you can find ride the beat, some people made whole careers off that, just having a good ear on what to pick or having input on the music. Like I'm glad you said the regional thing though, because like that is my favorite thing about. So I've traveled a lot, I've toured a lot.
Right.
And I really love to hear like what's going on in that particular area, right? Like, so I don't understand grime, right? But when I was in London, or I can't remember, we played maybe it was like Manchester or something. We played like a smaller city outside of London, and I never really quite understand this music. But then I'm at the show, and then like there's an after party with a DJ. Everybody's fucked up, and all the drugs are around. It's a wild scene, and I'm like, oh, I get this. Like, I really get this now. And I'm like, I didn't have to take Molly or anything like that, but I'm like, I'm in this. This is a culture right now, and I really understand it. And the Bay is like that too. When you start to really, the Bay is like it might as well be another country in terms of like the way, they really get down. It's one of my favorite places, in America, and their music is. It's just so interesting, like the shit that's cracking there. We never listen, like we don't get exposed to on the East Coast, Right. They have legends that are just like, that they exalt, and that they put out like these dudes drop like 50 albums,
Yeah.
Obviously, we all know E40, but like, but like, there's guys who've been doing it, just as long as E40, or like you look at like the Loonies or something like that, who probably should have been bigger, and but out in the Bay, you can't tell anyone you know, what do you mean? They're the goats, or, you know, like they have their own hierarchy of people who, and I really appreciate like the way they, you know, make music. And when you get out there and you meet some real like natives from Oakland or San Francisco, you start to really understand it and really understand the subculture. And I think that's interesting and important if like you really want to take a career in music, whatever avenue it is, you know, it's important to know that.
Oh, totally.
Go to Toronto and like understand that, like that vibe, or the Midwest, understand Midwest hip hop, or go to Chicago to understand what Chicago's really doing. And yeah, I think it's important.
No, that's totally important. And yeah, like you see so many people talk about Mac Dre.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You know, like speaking of Bay Area legends, like
yeah.
You know, like you talk about Mac Dre, you talk about people like Too Short, you talk about people like you know, just anybody involved, like not to say that either of them are hyphy, but like considering how big a thing hyphy is in the Bay Area in particular, like that shit means nothing over here. Like we don't know nothing about no hyphy over here. Like,
well, remember like when like DJ Shadow made a hyphy album and everyone lost their shit. They're like, "What is this? Sucks. This is terrible." It's like, well, I mean, he made a record that he's you know, he's from there. Like that's what he always wanted to make, you know. And then like if you're a New Yorker, New Jersey, Philadelphia, whatever, you probably got DJ Shadow introducing, and that's how you know him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And he can make that style. He pretty much pioneered that style. So like you take that out, and then he wants to make some stuff with a bunch of you know, crunk, like trap rapping, and that's what he probably always wanted to do. And then people are losing their mind over it. So yeah.
Yeah, you know, like like that very particular sound that he did on that project is something like you could even compare that to what happens over at Backwoodz and like the stuff that Woods does. Like that's like that's so specifically New York, in the same way that like the Shadow album is very specifically California. You know, like you really gotta like be. I talk about this with friends all the time. Like you really gotta be there to understand. Like if it doesn't click, it usually takes having to be there. Not everybody has the opportunity or like the ability to be there to hear it, but like
sure.
But like it definitely changes the way you appreciate the music. Another great example from my time in California, when I went out to Cali in 2018 was when Blueface started to pop. So I wasn't fully in on it at the time. Like I had heard a couple songs, but I was like, this is cool, but it hadn't hit me yet. My boy Miguel, shout out to Miguelito if he's listening. He drove me around. He drove me to some places that we were going to at that time, and the whole time he played nothing but Blueface and Draco the Ruler, because the both of them were starting to pop around that time. And like he played me Blueface's whole first tape, and like I got it. Like it clicked immediately. I was like, oh, this is why people like this shit. Like it makes it perfect sense to me. And I just lost my mind. Like this is of course before Tatiana was as big as it was. Like that was before that whole moment. But like in that moment, I was like, I just gained more of an appreciation for that specific brand of Cali rap that like doesn't necessarily have a foothold in our area. You know, like that's really, it's magic almost.
Yeah, I think you really hit it with Draco and Greedo. Those guys are. You gotta be aware of LA to understand what they're up to. You know what I mean? Like you can't drop that in the middle of like Harlem or whatever. Like I mean, there are some people who mess with it out here, but it's like, you know, it's different. And yeah, I think you got to really tap into what created, you know, the environment there. It's so regionally influenced, the dialect, the slang, like all of that, the beats they choose. Yeah, it's super interesting, man.
Real. And yeah, like free Greedo, because he just he just got denied parole. So free Greedo for real.
For real.
So before we move on to your actual career proper, I have one more question to kind of ask about this interconnection thing. So like, was there ever a time when you like, so like as you're watching movies and kind of falling in love with music the way you did, has there ever been a period of time up until I guess right this very second when you first consciously linked film and music together in your head and like kind of saw that relationship be like, oh, like these two things go together in a way that I hadn't thought about before?
Yeah, actually, and I'm sure this has been brought up, but Menace to Society for sure. You know, you got Saphir, MC8. I mean, AWAX is an amazing character. Like it's MC8. You know what I mean? Like it's him to a T. He's solid. He's battle tested. Like, and then cousin Harold, rest in peace, Sephir, who is Sephir is an amazing MC. I would certainly call him an influence. And then the main character, Kane. Didn't he have a career of some kind, rapping?
Did Kane rap? I don't know.
I think he did, and I think he was called Kane, and he wasn't good. But I'm pretty sure that, I wouldn't say that I know or listened to any of it, but that was obviously, I'm already into G-Funk. I'm already into the West Coast, and then I see that movie, as a young suburbanite, and I'm like, whoa, and I link it all together. But I'm like, that the use of music, obviously, aside from the fact that there are rappers playing roles,
right?
The theme song, the house parties playing the songs, and that was pretty big, obviously, probably for a lot of people.
Totally, yeah, great movie too. Menace to Society is like one of the really like a classic of really any genre, and like and to see it play off of Boys in the Hood the way it did, like seeing what Singleton did with Boys in the Hood and seeing what the Hughes brothers did with Menace to Society is just like, I don't know, it's just really nice. Those are just both really dope movies, and like Menace to Society in particular, it just sticks in my head in a different way than Boys in like Boys in the Hood is at least some kind of hopeful. Like even if Ice Cube's character winds up dying, like Menace to Society just like ends on a death, and it's just like boom, movie.
And he's almost out.
Almost out. Like, oh man.
Yeah.
Just
tough
like
one.
really
tough ending.
Yeah, tough ending. Really.
But the kid survives. So
right.
He in the end, there's at least that, But
which is rough. But no, totally. Like I think that's well, no, I don't want to say people underplay the role of like a soundtrack in the way a movie is, but I feel like it's starting to get talked about more than it did before, because there was this period of time where like the soundtracks were so connected to the movies themselves, and then that kind of went away for a bit. And now over the course of the last like 2-3 years in particular, it started to get like really a lot more aggressive. Like the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack was a really big part of that movie. They're doing the whole Space Jam thing with the new one, and they put out the Porky Pig rap that Murs apparently ghost wrote. Like
I just read that.
It is crazy. Like
I didn't hear it.
It's
I mean, but that's funny that Murs wrote it, because Murs can really rap. So interesting. Maybe
I'm just happy he's getting paid for it. Like he
sure.
He deserves it.
That man should be rich.
For real, honestly. Like shout out to Murs, bro.
Give Murs some money, will you? Whoever you are.
Murs for president was a huge part of my childhood. That was
okay.
Or no, I was a teenager at that point. But like
I met Murs when I was really young at a show, and he gave me he sold me like, this is pre end of the beginning. He was on tour with LP, and he was just kicking it. He was just chopping it up outside, and he was really cool. I can't remember what it was, but it was like one of his early like tapes on CD, like not like Varsity Blues, but it was in that world, So ever since then, I definitely root for that guy. He's a staple.
Yeah, he seems really genuine. I've never met him before. I've never even like seen him in person, but just like from everything he does, he just seems really genuine, and of course he's like one of the most technically gifted out,
Did you hear his interview with Dad Bod, Rap Pod, by chance?
No, I haven't. Shout out to the Dad Bod boys, because
for sure. Shout out to them, but you should check that out. Like honestly, it's one of the best interviews I've ever heard by a rapper.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because he's super, super candid on particularly what it was like to be a Black artist during like the indie boom, where he toured with a lot of white artists. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like Murs was like the Black dude on like the only Black artist on a lot of these runs. It'd be like Atmosphere or like ASAP or LP or whatever. So he has some incredibly insightful. He's super honest. You could tell he's just at the point in his career where he's like, I'm just going to say exactly. There's no politics at all. Like, I'm going to tell you what it is. And yeah, I recommend it highly. So if you're listening, check it out. And shouts to them.
Yeah, nah, yeah, and he earned it. He earned the right to be that way. So man,
Yeah.
shout out to Murs, bro. Like what,
Right.
like the Porky Pig rap is a lot, but shout out to Murs anyway.
Get that paycheck.
Honestly, for real. So okay, let's talk about you kind of developing more into, you know, like the rapper and artist you are today. So like from what I saw, your earliest music looks to date back to about, I want to say, the early 2010s. Is there stuff that I missed? Okay. So, you know, like considering this huge fascination you had with G-Funk and West Coast rap, when did you decide you wanted to make the leap from rap fan to rapper? Like what was that moment for you where you were like, I want to like make rap music and not just listen to it?
High school, I started recording things. So I'd say I recorded, like, went to my first like studio and like recorded vocals in like 2001 or something, and I'm only like 16 at the time. I could always kind of freestyle, you know. When I was like 13, it was like when I first freestyled, you know, we would get high and like fuck around, and it was never good, but it was fun. And then I started like practicing, and I got pretty good to the point where it was kind of like a party trick. Yo, just rap, you know, like, or whatever. And it was something that I hadn't really gotten punched in the mouth yet, like by life or by anything. So I thought I was really good. And sure, there was some talent there, but I didn't know what I was doing. And, you know, I would write a lot, write all the time actually. And, you know, I try to make, it wasn't even really song structures, it was just kind of rapping. And then I realized one day I was like, I can't be rapping about rapping. I got to know what I'm saying, and I got to, you know, really hone in on the craft. And then I would say, like, I had a crew. There was 3 of us, and you know, we would go back and forth and do things, and we never really got our stuff together. You know, we did a couple shows, but we never really got our act together. And then when I went to college in like central Pennsylvania, and immediately during college, you know, I had a SP 606. I used to make beats all the time, and, you know, I had a turntable. I'd sample records and sit at home and make beats all the time, but I didn't really do anything with them. And I thought they were good, but I don't know. I didn't really have, nothing really landed until post college, and I came to New York, and that's when everything kind of changed. And I started seeing what it took in person. You know, a few of the first rappers I ever saw when I came here in 2008 was like Cavalier was killing it back then.
Wow.
Still, yeah, for real. Homeboy Sandman, K Swift. You know, these dudes were really, I'd watch them. I'm like, oh, you know, they had videos. I was like, oh, wow. Like, and I could tell they just kind of, you know, they guerrilla styled it. And I was looking at them. I wasn't looking at mainstream artists. I was like, I'm looking at guys that I could go to an open mic at the New Eurekan or Bowery Poetry Club or whatever and catch them. And they were really cool people too. They were like, you know, super encouraging. And I just got an email back from Sandman about the new record, which is really, really nice to see. He checked it out, and he was like, yo, the growth is beautiful, respect. And you know, I remember being like 2008, really, really shy, baby faced, rolling up to the New Eurekan, putting my name in the hat and being like, oh, I mean, this room was filled with people who could really, really ride. And I got up there and kicked the freestyle, and Sandman was like, bro, come back next time, come back to the next one. And I was like, oh, you know, like, because this dude was larger than life, man. Like, he ran in every circle, everyone respected him, and he was killing it, you know. So homeboy Sandman, shout out to him big time. And I ended up meeting Willie Green shortly thereafter at one of these open mics, and then I was like, oh, this is my engineer now. Like, this is my dude. And he was like encouraging me, you know, like with the beats. He was like, yo, you know, you got a really good. He was like, yo, who's your favorite producer? Because I have a theory. And I was like, Madlib. He's like, that was it. That was my theory. He's like, yeah, like, that's what you want out of beats or whatever. So I took a long hiatus from there. That's a different story. But I saw what it took to make a record and how much went into it, not only financially but like physically and all that. And then when I met Green, I'm like, all right, well, this is my guy who I'm going to make my first record with. And I really honed in on that. And I guess I put that out in 2010. So that was kind of the first thing I put out. And then now I have something out. And granted, it's not making huge waves, but I was able to go do some shows. Obviously, I was performing in New York, as much as possible, but I was able to go overseas and, I started sending it to people overseas. I'm like, you interested in having me? Like I'm going to come. I don't care. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to grind. I'm going to work. I had a hotel job, work extra shifts and get that money to go over there and stuff. So I would say it was then, but it was a really slow burn. I didn't have access to the things I do now. There was no YouTube, so you couldn't kind of put up freestyles or anything like that, which I kind of am grateful for. I don't really want freestyles when I was really young up there. So, I mean, yeah, like you talked about, I think this before we were recording, but G Herbo, dude was making music at 15, records, I was not developed yet, so it was good. I mean, I think everything kind of came together the way it did, for a reason. And
right.
Lots of performing, lots of being around people who are lifers, for one way or another. They're gonna make music for life, and that's how I am. So I was like, it was good to be around people like that.
Right. Yeah. So you got you got Sandman around you. You got Willie Green in your back pocket at this point.
Yeah.
Before I move on to my next question, I've heard so many people talk about how influential and just what's the word I'm looking for? Invaluable Willie Green's advice and just his engineering. He's a name I've heard a lot. I don't know him personally, but I've you're not the first person I've heard be this is the guy,
Yeah.
I just felt I needed to point out that Willie Green, he needs I know he just had he had that car commercial recently that he made a song for or something.
He made a song for Nissan for Black History.
Nissan, it was Nissan. Yeah. So that's to me, seeing that happen, because that happened this year, I was like, wow, seeing him get that look is that's huge. That's like seeing Madlib get the car commercial that he got with Kate Renata. I think it was a Lexus thing they did.
Yeah.
That's
and he works, man. He is the fact that the amount of work he can do and at the level that he does it, he won't put his name on something if it's not he did everything for it. He mixed my record. We were up against a deadline because his son was about to be born. And he just became a father. So he banged out in some order, Shrines, Haram, my record, and Brass, More Mother and Woods. And still, I don't know how he did it, because these are not he doesn't just he's not a hired gun, so to speak, he really puts a lot of artful craftsmanship into these records,
Right.
It's not he's not the type of dude that's posting rates on Twitter and get at me, he's he's gonna cost you because it's worth it's this shit's forever, you're gonna have this piece of music forever. And I love that dude. He's a good friend of mine, one of my best friends. And watching it, it's a testament that it's gonna break. If you're that talented and that hardworking, it's gonna break at some point for you. Something's gonna happen that's gonna make it all worth it. And dude was I remember at one point things were tough, and he was just yo, I might need to get a different job for now. I mean, this is a long time ago, and I was just I can't picture you going back to something like bartending or a hotel or something like that. That's a tragedy. And he doubled down, he bet on himself and got his own studio, and everything took off and the way it should be. And that man deserves all of it. It's really great to see.
I love that. That's so good.
Yeah. But he never did get that job, thank God. I think something happened, or he picked up a project and it came through, and it was yeah, hell yeah.
Right. Man, we love to see that, for real.
Yep.
So real quick, talk to me about how, at this point you've you found yourself musically, or at least you've started to continue looking for yourself musically.
Yeah.
And eventually the Wrecking Crew happens. So talk to me about how Wrecking Crew came together and
yeah. It's a good story. I've been realizing recently, the way I meet people is it's always a good story, and I'm people that matter, you know, people that last. So there was a game, like a game show type thing. I used to enter all these like freestyle things that were like, I did them because they were fun, you know, and I'm pretty good at that aspect of emceeing. And there was a thing called Rhyme Calisthenics. Rhyme Calisthenics. All right. So it was like a crew. Shout out to them. They nothing but love. They've always showed me love. Out of Pittsburgh. And Mac Miller was like, I think, the first winner. He was a big part of it in the beginning, right?
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, he's you know, off the top of the head, he was really good. He was really good. So you spin a wheel, and then it's like the mirror round, and you have to diss yourself with the mirror, you know, or it's like the cock block round where like, you know, you gotta convince the girl to come to you and diss the guy, you know, that you're up against or whatever. So basically I had a good showing up here, and they had a slot and they needed somebody to do the Philly event. And I'm like, they're like, yeah, you know, we'll get you down there or whatever. And then you can compete for the prize or whatever. And it was me versus this cat Voss, Mike Voss, shouts to him. He ended up doing like a lot of MTV battles. He won. Another guy I can't remember, and then Curly Castro. And so I had already known Zilla because I booked him and Haslo to come up and play Brooklyn one time. And so we got to know each other. We hadn't really collaborated yet, but we were friends and we were getting friendly. And he was just like, yo, Castro's going to eat lunch. And I'm like, fuck, who is this dude? So I started Googling. I mean, I was aware of him. I knew his name, but I didn't know his music. And I'm like, nah. And then they're Haslo at the same time, they're both like psyching me out. They're like, yo, he off the top of the head, he's going to get you. And I'm like, nah, it's not happening. There's no way. I'm not losing. So I came in like, I'm ready, man. Like, yeah, I can't wait. And so I think like we ended up tying. I think Voss ended up winning, but me and him tied for second place. And the reason we didn't win is I think that we went off like the specs of what they asked you know what I mean? Like, it started freestyling or whatever. It's like, do a written, and it's like, you know, we slip into freestyle. The judge is like, you didn't do it by the rules, and or something. And then we're like, yeah, it was like a can't beat them, join them scenario. And we were like, all right. So like, I see you. And it just kind of grew from there. And, you know, we started making music together. We get along really well. We text like every day pretty much about basketball, rap, you know, this and that. Have you checked this out? And they become like super, super important. So like everything you know, if I'm doing something and I feel unsure about it, I send it to them. You know, them and Green pretty much are like the people I look for, like actual constructive criticism. Like, is this trash? Is this not trash? Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You know, and it's become kind of you know, a brotherhood of sorts. You know, we look out for each other, and we make really good music together because artistically and personally it works. You know, we're not trying to shoehorn each other into our songs. Like, oh, you know, paint by numbers, got to have him on a song. You know, it worked. It's like, this is you. I'm gonna put you in here. So on the new record, I was like, I love it if they were featured on my first song, but all they say is like one line, because I kind of like when people do that. I know it's a little disappointing sometimes. Like, you know, I'm like, oh shit, like featuring so and so, and then it's just the hook, and I'm like, but I wanted that aspect, and I wanted them to say like that line in particular, because it's like, be careful, you know. I'd be careful who I fuck with, because it's the truth. You got to be careful. Like, nowadays, you got to know who you're with, man. You got to know who you're riding with. I think we saw a lot of that happen in the last couple of years, where people didn't quite know, or maybe they did know, and now they're like, how didn't you know? You're on the road with this guy, and this guy turns out to be a terrible, you know, human being. I know these guys are good people. I put my, you know, name on that. That's important. I've known them all for a long time, and it's like, I want them to win as badly as I want to win, and we all get our moment. You know, we make sure that like, this is my moment to do my solo record, put that out, and that's what we're doing. It'll be Zilla's time next, and Castro's got an insane solo album coming. Like, I mean, it's the bazooka. And that dude sells out for big time features. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mean sell out. You know what I mean? Like he goes for the haymaker, where I'm like a little more subtle, where I'm like, all right, let's see what I can do here. But I'm like, this is my record. I don't want anyone on it. Like that's gonna, he's like, nah, I'm gonna get a hold of this dude, and so he's got some heavy hitters on his album. Great production. It's really good. I think you'll really like it. So, and we're also knee deep in a record, all three of us together. So, yeah.
I can't wait. Yeah. Like I've been thinking a lot about Curly's everything ever since the verse on Haram.
I mean, talk about a proud moment. I mean, he's styling all over an Alchemist beat. I couldn't believe it. Oh my God. I remember when the album dropped. So I got it a couple days early, but not I got whatever. Woods is very tight-lipped about his music in particular until it's out, and then he's like, "Yo, obviously, you're the homie. Here's the record." But that was man. I remember I went out I got a michelada at the Mexican spot near my house and just sat, drank it, and listened to the record. I'm like, this is crazy. This is amazing. This is crazy. I mean, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for them, and so happy that Castro. I think. I mean, obviously it's his story. I won't tell it, but I think that song wasn't gonna make the cut or something, and he got the word. Yeah, he got the word that it wasn't. And he was disappointed, and we were disappointed or whatever. And he's like, "Yo, I killed that verse," and then I guess Al made the call to put it on, yeah. I mean, that if that doesn't make you a fan of him, then I guess
what else will,
yeah, there's no way to convince you.
Totally. And yeah, before we move on to Lowberry and Crow's Feet, I do want to ask about you and Castro's relation, because of course you got Shrapnel, you had that going on for a little while, and you guys kind of bring something really special out of each other. I can't put it into words, but there's even considering you guys' relationship with the Wrecking Crew, there's just something special about. I mean, obviously there has to be, because you guys have made a lot of music together. So what would you say is the most unique thing about y'all's working relationship that's that kind of sets it apart from your work with the Wrecking Crew and with anybody else?
Yeah. I don't think we knew. I don't think we knew that it was going to be this seamless, or that we were going to be this good a foil for each other. And when I say that, I mean it just really works. His style and my style they just really work well together, and it's to use a basketball reference, it's when you got two players that are exceptionally good at covering the others, playing to the other's strengths, and maybe covering the other's weaknesses. I feel like that's where we're at. Hooks for me don't come as natural. I got to work on them a little more. Hooks for him, they just come, and they're great. And I never like them the very first time I hear them, and then until I hear it a couple times, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And that's what a hook is supposed to do. It's supposed to get in your head and make you remember the song, right? And I wrote a couple of hooks too there for Shrapnel. I'm not saying he's all the hooks, but the way he approaches making songs, he's incredibly prolific. He writes really well, really quickly. We're both avid freestylers, so we bring that out of each other sometimes. And I think that, I don't know, I just think that it boosts the others, each other's strengths, and I don't know, there's a je ne sais quoi to it, where it's you had to put it together to see what you had, and then now it's man, well, we're already pretty much done the follow-up, so it just, and he's the driving force behind that, because he was yo, let's pandemic be damned, let's stay on this, let's stay on this. And I was like, cool. And I had, my solo was done. Yeah. So I'm like, I'll turn all my attention to this. And it's also not wanting to let the other person down, it's I can't come weak on this, and now that we're, going to put it out with Woods again, you got another person that you don't want to let the label down. You don't want to let the fans down. So it brings out, and that's not to be a negative reinforcement, but it's we got a standard now, and it can't be below that standard. And if you got to rewrite that thing 10 times, then that's what you got to do. And I think that's what's come out of it. And it's fun. It doesn't feel laborious. It feels like a fun process, and we see each other a lot. And we catch up on what's going on. We got some shows that we haven't really done the live show yet, which is, you know, because COVID came and eliminated all that, but it's going to bring that energy out of each other. And I think we succeeded in our mission like tenfold, really.
So good. Yeah, I saw y'all are opening for Arm & Hammer, and I forget what show it is. But...
Yeah, we got a couple more. I guess the only one that's been announced is Boston, but we're also going to do Philly. So
beautiful.
Yeah,
love it. Yeah. So now that we're here, let's talk about Low Bearing Crow's Feet. Which, like, first off, like, congrats on getting this done. Like, it sounds super dope. Like, it's really really immersive. Like, it's just something that I've kind of, you know, like, it's it's gonna sound weird, but it feels sticky. Like, it's the kind of album that I would call like sticky, and it's just something that like you like move through and just kind of like, even when you're out of it, you're just kind of like picking parts of it off of you and being like, huh, that was dope. That was dope too. Like, that's kind of the feeling I got. Like, I would call it sticky in that way.
Hey, I'll take that. I appreciate it. It was, immersive for sure. Making it was, I didn't hear a lot of people on it. Like I mentioned before, I kind of heard Parsley, like, vocals here and there, like kind of the seasoning to it. But I wasn't like, yo, I got to get so-and-so on a track, or I got to get Woods on one of these. You know, I didn't approach it that way. I was like, I need to make this cohesive statement. And I hadn't done that in a really long time. And everything else had been collaboration. So this is like time for me to really kind of put my stamp on who I am, and, you know, control the narrative of like kind of my arc. I'm not a super prolific solo artist. I write a lot. Like, a lot of music will be coming out that I'm with, but in terms of making records, like, I don't sit there and craft a lot. You know, you're not gonna hear 2 solo albums in a year from me.
Right.
That's just not how I really operate. You will definitely hear more than 2 records that I'm on or whatever. But you know, it's mining some tough situations. It's reflecting on stuff you could have done better. It's I wanted it to be evergreen. I wanted it to come out and you don't know what year it came out.
Right.
I wanted the themes to be kind of as universal as possible. I wanted to write about what I knew. You know, I don't pander. I don't like want to pander to anybody or anything that's going on in the world. I just want to offer my take, my viewpoint, and keep it moving. Anytime I write something that like feels like I'm stepping outside of like the natural element of writing, I can't finish it. It's just done. I won't do it. You know what I mean? And that took a while to get to, right? But with this record, I wanted people to listen more than once. Right. Very, very specifically, I wanted you to hear it more than once.
And yeah, I could tell that you really put that kind of attention into this project. Is like, there's a line on Death on the Installment Plan, which I think might be my favorite song at the moment. Like, there's others, but like, there's one line on there that always sticks out to me the couple times I got to run it. And it was, it sounded like you said, do my loving on the run and do my thinking on the fly.
Get my loving on the run, do my thinking on the fly. Yeah.
My fault.
I definitely wrote that a little while back. A little more of a freewheeling drifter spirit at the time, but yeah, I mean, I've always been drawn to the character who kind of gets by on, you know, his guile and grit and cunning, and you drop him anywhere in the world and he'll figure it out. And you know that every character on the album is a branch of essentially what I want to be, or who I am, or who I've been, or aspire to be. And I kind of take a little poetic license with that, but it's like that line definitely exemplifies the, you know, I got $50 in my pocket. I'm in Kansas City, and that's all I got. How am I going to make this work? You know? And I'm like, I'll make it work. You know, I'll make it work. Like 2 weeks later, I'm running a bar or a card game or something. Like, that's the spirit of that type of character. Cool. I'm glad you singled that out. But,
yeah, because like I singled it out because that's like, because especially having all this context about you and like all the travels you've done and just like being all the different places you've been even before you started touring off of rapping, like this really you feel like someone who's just been around a lot of different places and just kind of like get jiggy wherever.
Mhm.
And that kind of and like I kind of get that through your music, and I get that through talking to you. So that kind of like and also just the way it's put together, it just sounded dope. But on top of that, like it's really like this just kind of seems like this seems like one of those things that people are gonna pull in like 10 years and be like, oh, that's the, you know, like when they do like the retrospectives, like that's the bar that kind of brings everything.
Right. Word, man. Yeah, thank you. Shouts to Willie Green and Small Pro, because I was gonna have that on me and Small Pro's eventual record, and Smalls was like, yeah, this is great. And then I'm like, I got one other song for the record, but I'm not sure if it's gonna be on this one. And Green was like, what are you doing? This is on your record. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
He's like, well, wait till I get my hands on those stems. We're gonna make this thing really pop. Yeah.
I love Small Pro too, so that's super fire.
Oh, he's incredible.
Speaking of Small Pro, another thing I wanted to ask you is like, you know, you're a rapper who also produces, and you have quite a few beats on this project. Like not a bunch, but like enough. And like you have at least one beat on here that's produced by you. More than like,
there's one solely produced by me, and then one I did with Fresh Kills.
Right.
Yeah. So I definitely will always kind of peek in and see what's going on. But most of the time I'm like, all right, Denmark Vesey, I'm like, I'm not doing nothing to his beats, man. That dude's amazing.
Yeah.
Brain Orchestra, same way.
Where's his fine? Shout out to Brain Orchestra.
Yeah, he's a man. Yeah, he's coming over here to do my release show on the 23rd. So I'm hyped for that.
I think I'm gonna slide. And before I forget,
let me know, man. Let me know. I'll put you on the list.
Thank you, appreciate that. What's it called? Also, Denmark. Shout out to Denmark. He's been a friend for years. And Martin Lucid Dream is one of the best records of the 2010s. And
I mean, he's incredible. He's incredible. He's always been super cool. We met, I forget, in New York at some point, and you know how like you don't know if people remember you sometimes. You're like, oh yeah, it was in passing or whatever. But like some of these really great artists like Quelle and him, and they remember things, you know, and you see them and they remember you and they're like, oh yeah, Prem, like, and he's one of those guys that's always been super dope as a human, incredibly gifted. Just, I mean, everything he does, be rapping, producing, whatever, like the dude is amazing, and he doesn't get talked about nearly enough. And our you know, interaction on this was great. He was, you know, after, you know, he's like, well, yo, where's my copy? Like, and I was like, oh yeah, I just assumed he was busy, you know. And then that's humbling, you know, because he's like, yo, I want that record, you know, not just what I did. He's like, I want to hear it, and you know, and he's genuine in that. He's not just doing it for some money and keep it moving. He's like, nah, like he's like, holler at me, you know, next time you want something, or and man, I can't say enough good things about him.
Either, man. Yeah. Man, like he invited me into his home and we were in Brooklyn and shit. But he's just solid individual.
Where is he now? Do you know?
I don't remember.
Yeah. I don't think it's New York anymore, but it might be like, yeah, okay. Yeah.
They've been all over. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure, but wherever you are, Denmark, thinking about you, bro.
Yes, sir. Indeed. Yeah.
So I bring up the rapper producer thing because this is something whenever I interview anybody who does that, I always have to ask, like, is there a big difference for you between rapping over your own beats versus rapping over other people's? Because you look at a song like Prairie Burn, and you look at a song like Apollo Kids Meal, which Brain Orchestra produced, or Joel Osteen, which Denmark produced, and like you just sound like you sound comfortable over everything, but like you can tell when it's yours, or at least I can tell when it's yours.
Yeah.
So like, is there a difference for you when you're like approaching somebody else's beat versus your own?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think I know immediately if I'm making something that I'm if it's for me or not, you know. And I don't do a whole lot of production, you know. I sit and like I'm really hyped to have like the night free to like just listen to mad records and just see what happens. And if I get a beat from you, it's way different. I have to think of it in terms of like, you know, how does this fit where is it going? What's the concept? But if it's me, I'm just like, I just got the beat. I'll hit play. I start writing. If it's cool, it'll take the next step. Prairie Burn was like an exorcism. I had to do it over my beat. I want to say it's the last love song I'll ever write, but you know, let's not kid ourselves. And it was like painful, but like really rewarding to get it done. And when I kind of made the switch up, that's when I was like, yeah, I'm gonna rap over this switch up. I'm gonna tag it together. Green's gonna transition, and this is it. And this is like my production for the record, for the album. But I didn't give it a whole lot of like. I didn't think I was gonna do another beat at all. I was like, I'm gonna do one of these for sure, and then that's it. I'll let the other guys do the heavy lifting. That's what they're there for. They're the producers, you know. So yeah,
it's really cool. And like, and you know, like since we're here, and I mentioned it, Apollo Kids Meal is. So I said Death on the Installment Plan was my favorite. I think Apollo.
That's I appreciate that, because that's getting brought up a lot actually. I think Woods is favorite too.
That's so fire. So talk to me about the idea, because you mentioned characters and you mentioned kind of having all these different stories on this album. So like, where does Apollo Kids Meal fit into all of that here? Like, what's the story behind the song and what are you trying to say on it?
Yeah. Okay. It's good. Apollo Kids, obviously from Supreme Clientele.
Of course. Yeah.
Behind the lazy boy where you hid your knife is something Ghostface says in his verse. And I was like, oh, that's super interesting. Imagery is great. And this is lazy, but Brain Orchestra's beat was called Lazy Boy. So I was like, ah. And then I thought of that line. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, Ghostface was like, was, is, will always be like my goat for sure. Just, I don't know. What you know, what's been said. He's the best.
Come on, like
esoteric, will beat your ass, all of that. Anyway, so
incredible.
Supreme Clientele came out. That's when I started to like write rhymes, and I had written some really like kind of maybe disturbing lyrics, and my sister found them, and I didn't hide it behind the lazy boy. I think I hid it like under my pillow or something. And she's like, what the fuck is this? Like, you okay? And I'm like, nah, I'm just like expressing myself or whatever. And I was really embarrassed. So I was like, oh, I'm going to explore like that kind of like when someone finds something they're not supposed to find of yours, it's personal. It's like, you know, it feels pretty, I think we can all relate to that. It doesn't feel good, you know?
Oh, no.
It's like embarrassing. It's like, it's a shame. So it's like,
yep.
You know, behind the lazy boy, I hid my journal. Words, if read by others, would only magnify the internal. It's like, oh, people are going to know what I'm really thinking. And that's a betrayal on the world or whatever. But it's also just kind of flexing and styling like Ghost did and Supreme Clientele, like free association and illusions and time together. And I was kind of trying to tap into that chamber and being like, man, that record really influenced me. Kind of pay a little bit of homage to the great. So I'm glad it all connected the way it did, because the flow was like a downhill, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to keep this. And Green was like, I'm like, was that the take? He's like, man, you know it was a take. Like, we're not touching this. And actually, a conscious decision I made on the record is there's 0 dubs, there's 0 ad libs on the entire album. Yeah, which is it's pretty rare, I think. But I told Green, I'm like, I'm not averse to those, but I'm like, I don't hear any on this record. And he was like, I fuck with that. He's like, so we have to really focus on your voice, and that's going to be the main instrument of this whole entire album. And I'm like, that's what I want. Like, I don't want a lot of extra people. I don't want, you know, a lot of people have really good ad libs, and that really make their style more interesting and pop more. And not saying that like I can't do that, but on this particular record, I'm like, I want it to be like, this is it, you know, this is the statement, and there's no real, you know, additional whatever's to it. You know?
Right, and you know, like you were talking about this being a statement piece for you, and that kind of makes it even that makes the statement even more bold. You know, like it's, you know, like not to say that ad libs take away from that at all, but like it's just there's just more of a you know, it's like Green was saying, there's more of a focus on your voice.
Yeah,
And that's, and you know, like that's something that, like you were talking about Ghostface, like that's something that he always kind of, I feel like that's something that Ghostface is always really like valued and appreciated too, because like his projects aren't really like chock full of ad libs like that either. At least Supreme Clientele isn't.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
And yeah, like just and like going back to the conversation earlier about like Snoop's place in the world and like his kind of masterclass in longevity, like Ghost kind of reached that point for people like around my age too, because like once again, like for me, my first experience with Ghost was around like, or like my first like real conscious experience that wasn't just like listening to Enter the 36 Chambers off recommendation. For me was Fish Scale. Like that was my first like real like, oh, let me give this a try. And then of course like I was in Def Jam Vendetta the game, and I went and found Supreme Clientele because they played one of my favorite weird little things is like they marked they played a song that they claimed was $1.50, but it's not $1.50 in Def Jam Vendetta. It was I don't remember what song it was.
$1.50 is like, and I love you.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
And the song they actually played, I'm gonna go check Supreme Clientele right now and see. But long story short, it's not $1.50 at all. $1.50. And like for years, I thought it was, and I told somebody about it, and they were like, "Oh, that's not what that is." And I was like, "What?" And then I had to go back and listen to Clientele again and be like, "Oh, okay, it's called this entirely."
But that's super interesting that Fish Scale was like his return to form in some way. Some people don't like that record, but I really do.
Woods did. He and I talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you, I pretty much can always tell what he's gonna really like pan right away. It's like no. Fish Scale's got some good moments. He's being a curmudgeon on that one. I think there's some fun times on that record.
Yeah, that and him and on the work that Doom did on there too. Like Ghostface and Doom were just like really on another level with the shit.
It's a shame we never got that when we should have gotten that, basically, because whatever comes out of it is not gonna be what we want. But it is what it is.
Yo, Angels was such a life-changing moment for me. Like,
really?
I used to like. What'd you say?
No, it's just super interesting to see that the eras of him and artists like him, where it's like, oh, you got into him, that I got into him. Here, obviously, someone like Woods, his experience is way different, and it's a testament to those guys, man.
Right. And before I forget this, so the song they played in Def Jam Vendetta that I thought was $1.50 was The Grain. $1.50 is the song with Capadonna and Method Man. The Grain.
You want to see it? Yeah. Okay.
You want to see it? Yeah. Like that intro sample is just RZA did his thing on that whole album.
For sure. and the no Ghostface. That's so good. Even that like subtle touch is really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful song. Like that was like Fish Scale and that song were like my two, like, okay, I'm here now. Like I get it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I have one more question for you, and it's kind of like to attempt to tie at least everything musically together. So if I'm not mistaken, this is your first solo project for Backwoodz.
For Backwoodz, yes, correct.
Yeah, I thought so because Rapno was of course Backwoodz. So like this is your first solo piece for Backwoodz. And of course, like Backwoodz has been going pretty wild the last couple of years between all the stuff Arm & Hammer's been doing, and the More Mother project, Brass, which is also super dope, and everything going on with Fielded. Like it really feels like there's been like Backwoodz is kind of like y'all are making, y'all are putting out some statement projects these past couple of years, and of course the ecosystem is just like continuing to grow even more. Like so considering this is your solo debut for Backwoodz, where do you feel, or actually, because like you've of course known these people for so many years and you've worked with them before, like you're not just like some random who just showed up and when they were like, oh, let's do it. So considering your relationship with them, the music you've made and the music you'll continue to make, like where do you feel you fit within the Backwoodz family, and how, if at all, do you feel like you kind of distinguish yourself and you're just kind of like, I'm here, but I'm also PremRock? Like,
that's a good question. How do I fit in? Been there, been in a lot of rooms that were kind of instrumental to like what's Backwoodz is, you know, like being kind of like when Green was starting to do everything. So I saw it, you know, I saw it all happen. I saw Woods, you know, like basically when I met him, he had just finished History Will Absolve Me. And I was like, this is an amazing, oh my God. I mean, talk about a statement record. That record was, man, I was like, I told everyone I could, anyone. I had one whiskey. I'm like, I'm telling every random person I see, I'm like, have you heard this rap? You know? And I know the guy. You know, we're becoming friends at this time. And yeah, I mean, to maintain my solo identity, but also kind of acquiesce to the sound of Backwoodz, I think is like goes hand in hand. It's part and parcel. Like it's already in my DNA to make music and work with these people. Like Messiah Music, he's obviously a mainstay. Willie Green's going to, yeah. Shout out, big shouts. I may be one of the few people who actually met the mysterious Messiah Music. Very nice guy. Baltimore years back, but a benefit to traveling is you get to meet these people and actually put a face to in the internet age. You don't do it often, but yeah, I mean, I want to just have a seat, you know, be part of the conversation, like put my best foot forward with them, you know, make them proud of the work that I've been putting in, and I've always wanted to see the label succeed, whether I was a part of it or not, whether it be like putting together some shows back in the day, going on tour at Woods, or taking basically like booking a tour for Woods with, you know, as me as a supporting act, to very, very mixed results. But a hell of a lot of stories. And that was, I just always felt like I'm part of the team in one way or another, you know, and whether or not they're putting out my records, you know, or you know, whatever I believe in it. And I know at his core, like this is what he really believes in. He really believes in making like great records that are going to be remembered, and great packaging, art, all that. And it's just like really reaffirming when you meet somebody who's like, you could tell whatever people want to say, or whatever fronts they may put up, or whatever. And I mean the word front not as like a deceptive tool, but as like, you don't know me till you know me.
Right.
Yeah. To be around someone who truly believes in this shit, like in this thing, like down with this shit, like it's gonna happen, this is gonna work, and it's just a matter of time. You know, it, like, you know, to be cliche or corny, like it definitely warms my heart and makes me feel like this is all worth it. It's always going to be worth it as long as you continue to do, you know, what you intend to do. And I think Backwoodz is like an extremely sterling example of that. And everyone associated with the label is going to see the fruits of what they put in. It's going to happen, you know, it's going to happen. And I don't think, if you asked Woods 5 years ago if he thought the label would be in this position, he'd probably say no, but he wouldn't stop doing it, obviously, you know. And then here it is. He can't keep stock, you know. It's flying off the shelves. I remember when we were running around the country with the van, or Mo Nichols' Jeep, loaded with Today I Wrote Nothings, and people were like picking it up at the merch table, putting it down.
The beginning.
Next city, same thing. And I'm like, these motherfuckers have no idea. This is going to be worth a lot, you know. And Furtive Movements, I think, only sold out recently. So it's like, you know, you gotta you gotta really love it, and everyone associated with the label does. And like I said, I used the term lifers before. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah,
totally. And yeah, you know, like you were talking about cliches, like things become cliche for a reason, you know.
Yeah.
We tend to underappreciate them because like they've been used a bunch, but like things become that for a reason. And like to see him going from barely being able to push Today I Wrote Nothings to the pre-order for an album with Alchemist go out of sale in like 20 minutes because like I was on that line.
The website crashed. Yeah,
the site crashed, bro. Like to go from those beginnings to see that, like, and you having been there from basically the jump, like that's, you know, like that's got to be an amazing thing to like, you know, be like, I was a part of that, and like now you're like officially isn't the right word, but like you're there, like you have a project on the label now.
Yeah,
like,
the album came out on the label, so it is like, yeah, it's like the official, the drying of the ink on the paperwork or whatever, so to speak. It's like, you know, and that felt really good. And it, you could be down with somebody, you can make music with somebody, but to like put out their record means a lot. And I know he believes in the record, and I know that this is just kind of the beginning of what we want to do with it. And, you know, you have your time, and hopefully the life of the record is longer than as long as it can be. And I hope people keep discovering it. I didn't expect like a huge, you know, groundswell of coverage at first. I think it's going to be one of those things that gets passed around, and, you know, and it's going to might not click right away for a lot of people. And I'm cool with that. I don't make it to be forgotten next week, you know?
Right. You know, like you make it so that people might, you know, like stumble across it in a year or two, even
totally.
5, and be like,
or,
no, like what is this? You know?
Yeah, like I like back when like Def Jux was doing their thing, like there'd be certain records that weren't quite as popular, but you might like it more than others, or more than the bigger releases that came out of the label, and it's there. And once you put that out, that's forever.
Right.
You know?
Like you're like look at what happened with the Cold Vein. The Cold Vein just turned 20 this year.
Yeah, and there's people still discovering like a Lucid's record, Save Yourself,
right, exactly.
or
even something like Save Yourself. Like Save Yourself is only 6 years old, and people are still discovering that. Like,
yep,
totally, yeah, no, like, and you know, like you're in that fold, and like not even like considering like the name Backwoodz, like you're just like you care. I can tell you care. Like the way you're talking to me, the way you make your music, like I can tell you care, and that means everything. You know, like it might not seem like it sometimes, but like that means everything. You don't need me to tell you that, but like
I mean, I appreciate you saying it though. You know, I'll definitely take it. You know, yeah, man. I mean, it's something that I got to do, and it's nice to have a collective of like-minded folks who are fucking incredibly talented. It's like, you know, when do you have that? Usually there's some hang up, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, that person's really talented, but and then it's like, that's not the case, you know. That's not the case here. So, yeah.
Well, yo, Prem, this was so dope.
Yeah,
like,
this is a lot. This is great. I was like, oh man, did I miss it? Like, what did I do? And then I looked at the calendar, I think like last night or this morning. I was like, oh, okay, 1:30, got you. But,
it was completely my fault, because
it's all good. It's all good.
Zoom, like Google Calendar just does, like I'll set a time, and then it'll be like, oh, you mean this time? And I didn't check that time, because like I wanted 1, but then they were like 1:30. Yeah. I didn't realize it's completely.
Come on, it's all good. It's all good. I really appreciate it. Great time. Keep up the good work. This is a really cool pod, and I'm glad we got to talk about something other than like, you know, the boilerplate pod questions. I like, let's get into movies. Let's get into all that. It's dope. It's cool.
Yeah, man. This is all about conversations. You know, like I like to talk to people, and like this just seemed like the best way to do that, and just like have kind of a grasp on like I can do this.
Yeah.
So thank you for even being interested. You know, like you reached out to me, and that means a lot. So
hell yeah. Like, yeah, of course. Build the brand. The brand is getting stronger by the day.
We'll see, man. We'll see where we are in a year.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far. And shout out to all the Black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time. 1.